All right, we're here with Chris Cundiff, the pastor at Sandstone E Free. My name is Joe Smith. I direct Broken Strength, a Path to Purity, a ministry that wants to equip churches to help their men in the battle for sexual purity. So Chris, give us a little bit of background about the length of time you've been there and a little bit about your family.
Sure. Yeah. We've been here in Sandstone for 13 plus years, working on 14. We're a rural community, small. I think our town is around 2,800 people, working class people, hardworking people. The longer we've been here, the more we have recognized almost a demographical isolationist kind of perspective, where people have resisted formative, what we might call intrusive relationships. But we're seeing progress in that, which is kind of interesting. My family, I've been married now for 16 years. We got 3 kids. My oldest is 12. My youngest just turned 8. And so we're in the throes of that pre-adolescence, getting ready for the crazy train.
Yes, indeed. Yes, you are, having been through that twice now as a grandparent. So what prompted you to consider doing a purity event at Sandstone E Free?
I think a couple of things. One, purity has been a battle for me. It's something that most men that I've ever interacted with who have been transparent have battled with to some degree. And so, we as the church, I think, have to help these guys that are struggling day in and day out. We have also struggled to gain traction with men's ministry. And so, trying to find an area where guys are hungry, trying to find an area where we can significantly minister to men and stir up a passion to follow Christ. As I interacted with Irv through the North Central District and Project Purity and things over the years, it was one of those things we wanted to do. As we began praying as elders about the process, we talked with Irv. We started getting some traction, and just really felt like this was where God wanted us to go to minister to our guys.
Okay, good. So the purity event, we have 2 testimonies and then a PowerPoint on the power of the gospel, and then we invite guys up to confess their sin to a chaplain. So from your perspective, what were the important, critical, impactful aspects of that night?
I think there were several. One, that a church would address the issue of sexual sin head on, unapologetically and without blushing. I think too often, to our own shame, the church has been silent in the area of sexual struggle. It's something that's not easy to talk about, and providing a place where, we could tell these guys ahead of time, this is what we're going to talk about. This is crucial for us to talk about, and it's a safe place to talk about it. I think having the testimonies up front of guys that have struggled with this, talking openly, modeled exactly what we were asking our guys to do, right? To be honest about their struggle, to recognize that just because they struggle doesn't mean they're worthless. The gospel exists for us too, even as we struggle in the area of sexual sin. Our 2 testimonies were unique. We had one who was a pastoral testimony on the weaker side of struggle, but struggling in more of a high profile role. And then we had a guy who gave his testimony, and his testimony was raw, and it was hard, and he hit bottom. And having testimonies on both sides, I think, gave our guys regardless of where they were, someone whose story very much resounded with them. And then having the freedom in the moment with a bunch of guys watching to come forward and say, you know what, I need help. I think was very freeing for a lot of guys. Even the guys who maybe didn't necessarily take that next step of going to the boot camp and the purity platoon, to be able to say publicly, again, with people from the community watching, you know, I need help in this area.
Yeah, neat. And there were 56 guys at Sandstone. Chris mentioned it's a town of like 2,600, which was the size of my high school. So people know people, and that is an unusual number of guys to come. Do you think something unusual happened there to create that? Because we've not experienced that on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is, you know, God really stirred up the hearts of the guys in our area. You know, I think if we attribute it to anything, it would be that. I think guys are hungry for help in this area. I think the evil one has convinced a lot of guys that this is an area they're never going to have victory over.
Right.
They're stuck there, and that's just who they are. And when we throw a rope out and say, hey, we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about the importance of holiness, transparency, accountability, purity as a lifestyle. I think there's a hunger that was very evident in the response that we had. And we had guys from several different churches who came, and we had leaders from several different churches who came. And you know, we tried to get some chaplains from those different churches that were going to be represented, so that there was relationships within their own faith community to follow up and provide that accountability.
Yeah, if the leaders value it and show up, probably some of their men will as well. And that's what we've tried to encourage pastors to say. If this is important to you, if you come and you proclaim it and you encourage guys will show up. If you just say there's an event over here, so and so, and don't have much energy about it, they probably won't. Have you been able? Now we're 2 years past now. Is that right?
Yeah.
Have you been able to see any longer term impact on the men in your church?
You know, I think as we look at longer term impact, there's a few things we look for. We look for, obviously, persistence and purity. I think we've seen that, particularly with the guys who took those next steps, who went into the boot camp, went through the platoon, where there's now a camaraderie among those guys. For example, one of the guys who went through it with me, I play golf with regularly in the summer. And, you know, because we went through all of that together, it's not uncommon for us to have conversations about purity. We just didn't have that before. And so with those guys, you know, we're seeing a continued impact for a desire to live out and the tools, I think, to live out that purity lifestyle going forward. We also had the unique opportunity to see some fathers and sons go through this together. And a couple of the comments that I've received from those fathers is just gratefulness for a framework to have that purity discussion with their teenage sons, you know, so that, again, it breaks the ice and it gives that opportunity for dad to disciple son with transparency. And you know, that's been very, very powerful.
Interesting. Yeah, you used the term framework. I use the term platform. It gives them a platform or a venue, an avenue, a track to run on to bring this up, because most of us guys, I'm a boomer deluxe, born in December of 46. There was not much discussion. Matter of fact, there was no discussion in my family about these topics. And so guys figure it out on themselves, and generally we don't figure it out in the most positive way. Was this a difficult event to conduct for your church?
Other than the logistical things, you know, we in our area, we struggle with RSVPing to things. And so we got a lot of last minute.
Not just your area.
Yeah. we got a lot of last minute additions, but those were all welcome because we knew that each one represented a guy that we could help, we could minister to. Because this was a passion of our elders, this was a passion of mine, and we had a lay leader who stepped in and sort of took the lead. For me as a pastor, it didn't add a lot of work, but I got to see a lot of neat things. Now, I had a very hands-on role in it. I was one of the chaplains that night. I led the boot camp and the purity platoon. But again, it was time well spent. I've said multiple times when talking about this with other pastors that it is probably still to date the most fruitful investment in the men of our church that we've had. Watching these lives transform and watching these guys find purity and the beauty that can come with that. The impact it has on their marriage, the impact it has on their walk with Christ, well worth the time.
Great testimonial. So if there's a pastor looking at this and he goes, I don't know, I got a lot of things to do, I'm pretty busy, what would you say to him? Maybe you just said it.
Yeah. I think I would say what I just said. This is, I think, easily the most fruitful ministry we've seen with our guys, creating men who are transparent, which has long-lasting ramifications for their walk with Christ, right? We know the value of being transparent with one another, living out that value of transparency and accountability, not just in the area of purity, but in our walk with Christ as well. And so, I think this is something that even if the guys in your church haven't voiced that this is a need, I think it's an easy assumption that a lot of guys are struggling here, and it becomes a roadblock for the spiritual maturity and the disciple that we want them to become, for Christ.
Amen. Thanks for hosting, and thanks for sharing your interview, Chris. God bless you up in Sandstone, Minnesota. Thank you,
Thanks.
brother.
Welcome.